Get ready for Tennessee's next game on the hardwood with our Vols matchup breakdown. We preview the Vols' opponent and give you Tennessee's keys to victory here on Vol Basketball Fever. Hello everyone and welcome in to another Vol Basketball matchup breakdown video. I am Nathaniel Rutherford here with Vol Basketball Fever to talk about Tennessee's next game in men's basketball, and it's a big one against Kentucky at 9 o'clock Eastern Time in Thompson-Boling Arena on Tuesday night. Tennessee, Kentucky, the biggest, most storied rivalry in men's basketball in the SEC, and we're going to get a second time this season. These two teams already played once before, a little bit more on that in a second, but second time this season. Very excited about this game. If you're here and watching this video, thank you all so much. Please give this video a like, and please subscribe to our channel while you're here as well. We could use more subscribers, more interaction. We would love that so much. Also, make sure to subscribe to our podcast while you're here. We have Vol Basketball Fever and Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcasts as well that are on this YouTube channel, and also everywhere you get podcasts with Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it, we're there. Leave a comment on this video. We would love to know your thoughts on this game. If you have score predictions, if you have anything you agree or disagree with for me in this video and the breakdown of it, please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Any interaction you give really helps at the channel, really helps at this video, so we would love that so much if you guys would share in there. We'll try to comment back and stuff as well. A couple of quick injury notes here at the top before we really break down this game. As of the recording of this video, it kind of remains to be seen whether or not these two players will play, but it's looking like no for possibly both of them, but at least maybe the bigger of the two. But Kentucky has a couple injuries coming into this one. The biggest one is Ty Washington, Kentucky's second leading scorer and just a dynamic freshman for them. Looks like he's going to be out and will not be playing against Tennessee on Tuesday night. It also looks like Jacob Toppin, a key piece off the bench, a key big man in the front court off the bench for Kentucky, looks like he is questionable, and I don't know if he's going to play or not either. Washington being out would be a huge blow to Kentucky as a freshman. Again, second leading scorer behind Oscar Tshiebwe, and he's been really effective as that second point guard along with Sahvir Wheeler, and actually filled in very nicely for Wheeler when he was out. In SEC play, Washington is averaging 12.5 points, 4.1 assists, 3.5 rebounds, and almost a steal and a half per game while shooting 31.3% from three. So again, he's been very effective, and he torched Tennessee last time these two teams played. So he's been very effective against the Vols, and he's been very effective in SEC play overall. So if he's out, which looks like he's going to be, that's a big blow for the Wildcats. For Toppin, he's been a key piece off the bench in the post, as the 6'9 junior is averaging 5.7 points and basically 3 rebounds a game in SEC play. So if he can't go, you're going to see probably a little bit more of Lance Ware in the post for Kentucky when Tshiebwe's not out there, or even when Tshiebwe is out there. Maybe you'll see Ware as the 4. Don't see that too often, though. But that'll be two guys to kind of keep an eye on to see if they were active for Tennessee or active against Tennessee on Tuesday night for the Wildcats. As I mentioned, these two teams have already played once before, and if you remember, it didn't go very well for Tennessee. 107-79 victory for Kentucky in Lexington and Rupp Arena. Kentucky could not miss in that game. Despite Tennessee having more success than usual on offense in that game, it was all Kentucky. Wildcats blasted the Vols and shot 67.9% overall as a team, 61.1% from three, and 95.2% from the free throw line. They went 20 of 21 from the free throw line. That's why when Gene Henley and I, who is my co-host for the Vol Basketball Fever podcast, talked about that game, we said it's more of a kind of throw it out rather than say it's an indictment on Tennessee, because Kentucky, if you're going 20 of 21 from the free throw line, it's just your night, like to hit shots. And of course, Tennessee's defense, had issues in that game, and the offense did too. But my goodness, Kentucky was just lights out in that game, and there wasn't a whole lot. It doesn't matter who they played that game. Did they play Gonzaga, Arizona, Duke? It didn't really matter who they're going to play. They were going to beat them that night. It just happened to be Tennessee. Washington, as I mentioned earlier, was really huge in that game, dropping 28 points, while Sahvir Wheeler, who isn't known as a big scorer, had 21 points and 8 assists in that game as well. So again, Washington, if he's out, that's huge because he almost dropped 30 on Tennessee last time these two teams played. Vols will not miss him, I'm sure, if he's not on the court for Kentucky. Really, the only positive for Tennessee in that game was that they held Oscar Tshiebwe from getting a double-double. He had 9 points and 12 boards, one of the few times this year he hasn't gotten a double-double. But that's a very, very, very small victory in that pretty devastating defeat for Tennessee. But since then, though, Tennessee's actually been playing a lot better, and I think that's kind of been the catalyst for the season for Tennessee so far was that game that's kind of been the turning point for Tennessee, because this game will actually, in fact, feature two of the hottest teams in the SEC right now, because it's not just Kentucky. Tennessee has been playing well. It's been Kentucky playing well as well. Since that game, Tennessee has not lost an SEC game. In fact, the only game they lost was that SEC Big 12 matchup against Texas, where Tennessee really fought back furiously at the end and made it a 1-point game, or I guess tied it up, and then Texas took a 1-point lead and ended up winning the game by 1. But Tennessee has won 7 straight SEC games and are winners of 7 of their last 8 games overall since losing to Kentucky by 1,000,000 points in Rupp Arena. But again, Kentucky's also been very good. And they've also only lost 1 game since the last time these two teams met, going 7-1 overall. In fact, Kentucky's actually won 6 straight games overall in 10 of their last 11. So again, these two teams have been really hot and been playing a lot better. Well, Kentucky's playing well back then, but Tennessee's been playing a lot better. Kentucky's just been playing really well over the last, I guess, month or so at this point. But they've won 10 of their last 11 since falling on the road 65-60 to LSU all the way back on January 4th. Their only loss in that stretch also was to then number 1 Auburn, 80-71 on the road. So their one loss has been to a really, really darn good team. And granted, Tennessee's one loss has been to a good team as well, just not number 1 worthy. Texas is a top 25 team, and it was on the road too. But these two teams have both lost to quality opponents since the last time they played each other. That's been it. They both have had 1 loss since they last played each other. So this isn't going to surprise Vol fans any at all from the time you watched Tennessee and Kentucky play, and any other time you've probably watched them since then. But Kentucky is one of the few teams in the country that is elite on both ends of the court. Kentucky is one of 8 teams on KenPom right now that's ranked in the top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. So one of 8 teams that has a top 20 ranking in both offense and defense. So again, they're an elite company. That's Elite 8, if you look at it that way, material. But they really are a legit, I think, Final Four contender with their roster makeup and what they can do offensively and defensively. Kentucky currently ranks 3rd on KenPom overall, ranked 4th in offensive efficiency and 12th in defensive efficiency. The number 4 offensive efficiency is actually going to be the highest rated offense the Vols have faced this season. Obviously since last time they played Kentucky, but that's going to be the highest rated offense they've faced all year. Villanova and Arizona are the only other teams ranked in the top 10 on offense in KenPom that Tennessee has faced this season. Again, Kentucky's ranked 12th on defense efficiency in KenPom, which will be the 7th game this season Tennessee has faced against a top 15 defense on KenPom. I mentioned it before, I mentioned it again. Tennessee has one of the top 5 toughest defensive schedules in the country, according to KenPom. So Tennessee is not a stranger to playing really good defenses. And they've been playing a lot better lately against maybe not as good defenses, but still some pretty good defenses over the last few weeks or so. So this will be, again, another tough test on defense for Tennessee, and also a really high-powered, very high-scoring offense with Kentucky as well. For Kentucky, Tuesday's game will mark the 4th game against a top 15 KenPom defense that they've faced this entire year, and their 5th against a top 20 defense. They've lost every other game they've played against a top 20 KenPom defense when it comes to defense efficiency, other than the last time they played Tennessee. So they have 1 win against a top 20 KenPom defense, and it came against last time they played Tennessee, at home in Rupp Arena. But other than that, they've lost all the rest of them. So take that for whatever you will. The Vols offense is a top 30 offense on KenPom right now. This will be the 8th time Kentucky has faced a top 30 KenPom offense, and they've only lost once to a team in the top 30 on offensive efficiency on KenPom, and that was to Duke way back in early November, like right at the beginning of the year, or beginning of this season, I guess. So Kentucky's done pretty well against the higher-end offenses they have faced this season. But if I had to guess, this is probably the info that most of you come here for right here is not just kind of the breakdown of, Kentucky's really good here, Kentucky's really good here, and obviously some Tennessee matchup stuff too, but really is how different is Kentucky on the road compared to at home? Because last time these two teams played was in Rupp Arena, and clearly Kentucky had the home energy going there in that game and just could not miss. How different have they been this season on the road than they have been in Lexington? We know Tennessee is a lot better at home this year and are currently undefeated in Thompson-Boling Arena. And again, last time these two teams played was in Rupp. But are the Wildcats a more susceptible team on the road? Good news for the Vols is that the answer is yes. Kentucky is also undefeated at home, but every single loss they've had this year has come away from home. 3 of their 4 losses have come in true road games, and all 4 losses have come away from home. The other one was a neutral site loss to Duke, but 3 of their 4 losses have been in true road games. They're 5-3 this season in true road games with losses to Notre Dame, LSU, and Auburn, but they do have some pretty key true road victories, those include Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Kansas, Alabama, and South Carolina. Obviously, Kansas and Alabama being the 2 key ones and the kind of the ones that stand out there. In true road games this season, Kentucky is averaging just under 71 points per game at 70.9, which is a lot under their regular season average overall, like 81 something. And they're also allowing 66 points per game in true road games. So about 71 points is what they're scoring, and they're allowing at 66. That's a much closer margin than their home games and just kind of overall on the year. But they have won their last 3 road games, however, and one of those being the game against Kansas in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So that is worth noting. Conversely, the Vols are a perfect 13-0, undefeated at home this season. They have won 14 straight games at home dating back to last season. And they're 6-0, obviously, this year against SEC teams at home as well. The Vols are holding SEC opponents and Arizona, so kind of the high major teams they've played at home this year, to just 63.4 points per game, while in those same 7 games, Tennessee is scoring 73.4 points per game. So like a 10-point per game difference, basically exactly, in those 7 games for Tennessee when they've played high major opponents, SEC and Arizona, at home this year. This will be only the second time in SEC play that the Vols have had back-to-back home games, and it's the last time that's going to happen. So they've only had 2 times. This will be the second time and the last time for Tennessee they've had back-to-back home games in SEC play. Interestingly, though, they will have another back-to-back road, series here soon, and they had 3 of those this year. That'll be the 3rd one. So Tennessee's had more back-to-back road SEC games than they have home SEC games. So someone over there in the scheduling office for SEC doesn't like Tennessee a whole lot. But yeah, so this is it's also a little issue with the fact that Kentucky got to host Tennessee in the afternoon on a Saturday in Rupp Arena, and this is a 9:00 at night game in the middle of the week for Tennessee when they're hosting Kentucky. Is what it is, but just kind of like really picks at me and grinds my gears that that's kind of how this played out. Not even just to take away the fact that that's kind of a disadvantage for Tennessee. For the SEC, why would you not want your biggest rivalry in men's basketball to always be a Saturday game, regardless of where it's played? I just don't understand that the kind of the logic behind having this be a Tuesday night at 9:00 tip-off, but I digress. Before we get to a little bit more of a kind of deeper dive here in a second, we'll also mention that while Tennessee is undefeated at home this year, Kentucky has actually won back-to-back games against Tennessee and Knoxville. So they've won 2 straight games in Knoxville against Tennessee, so that's also worth pointing out. They won last year and they won the previous year in Knoxville, so Kentucky's had a little more success in Knoxville recently. Overall, it's almost a 500 mark, though. Tennessee has like a very slight disadvantage. I think it was 51-54 at home against Kentucky. So it's been very 50-50 in Knoxville when these 2 teams have played. For Kentucky, this marks the 5th game this season against a team ranked in the top 10 on KenPom, where as of recording this video, Tennessee is currently number 10 on KenPom. Kentucky is 2-2 in the previous 4 games, with, of course, one of those wins coming against Tennessee, the other against Kansas, the losses coming against Duke and Auburn. For Tennessee, this will be the 4th such game, and they are 1-2 in those previous games. One of those losses, of course, to Kentucky, and they also lost to Villanova, with the only win coming against Arizona. And kind of the last little housekeeping thing here, just kind of interesting notes and kind of stats here. This is going to be the 25th time that both these teams have been ranked when they face off against each other. And because they played earlier this year when both teams are ranked, this is the 25th time. Tennessee is just 11-13 in those previous matchups. So the Vols have a losing record. But again, very close to 500, which is kind of what you expect when it's 2 ranked teams going against each other over the last 50 years or so. But Tennessee 11-13, which means Kentucky is 13-11 when these 2 teams are ranked and face each other. But let's go look at some of the finer details of these specific teams for this year, not just kind of historically looking at different trends and stuff. There isn't really much that Kentucky does poorly on offense. So that's not breaking news. You all know that probably at this point. But they lead the league in SEC play in field goal percentage overall, 3-point field goal percentage, field goals made, assists per game, and points per game. So that's how darn good they've been. They're number 1 in the SEC and what is that, 5-6 categories at this point in SEC play. They also, I guess, technically lead in this one too, because they have the fewest turnovers per game in SEC play. And they grabbed the second most defensive rebounds and the fourth most total rebounds in SEC play. So not quite as dominant as they were in non-conference play because they aren't going against some, cupcake teams. So they haven't had as many dominant rebounding games from Tshiebwe and just kind of overall from the team. But he's still been a monster. The team overall has still been really good at grabbing rebounds this season in SEC play. If you're going to really kind of gripe and nitpick about their offense and something they don't do great, it's actually that they're somewhat average on their 2-point shooting. They're 6th in the SEC and 2-point field goal percentage in SEC play. And they don't really attempt many threes despite them being really good at it. They only attempt 17.5 per game, which is 12th in the SEC. So the, third fewest in SEC play third fewest despite being the best when it comes to percentage-wise. That's a little weird, but they also, they have Oscar Tshiebwe, and they have guys who can drive to the basket and do really well there too. So don't need to shoot a ton of threes, but they're really good when they shoot them. But they do also only get to the free throw line, not very much, averaging 19 a game in SEC play. So against league opponents, about less than 20 free throw attempts per game, which ranks 10th in the SEC. So not great at drawing fouls, but again, they find so many other ways to score that, it's really hard to pick apart the offense and say, oh, well, they do this really badly because they do so many things good. But they are, again, likely going to be without Ty Washington. If you're looking for an example of what they did earlier this year without him, he's only missed one game this season, and Kentucky struggled in that game. The second half, especially against Mississippi State, they allowed Mississippi State to roar back, score almost 50 points in the second half, and had to go to overtime to beat Mississippi State in Rupp Arena. It wasn't a road game. It was in Rupp Arena. They allowed State to roar back without Ty Washington in that game. I feel like they had someone else out, but I could be wrong. But he wasn't in that game, and they ended up having to go to overtime to beat State 82-74. They outscored State 10-2 in overtime, so it's tied 72 all going into overtime. And again, that game also was a 9 p.m. tip, which is kind of ironic and interesting. Maybe Kentucky doesn't like 9 p.m. tips. We'll kind of see here. But again, without Ty Washington, a late tip-off in that game, and they had to go to overtime to find a way to win that one. I think Vol fans obviously clearly want to beat Kentucky, but I think with how good Kentucky is, taking an overtime loss in Knoxville, probably take it, and it doesn't look bad on your resume by any means, especially the way the first game went. If you're able to fight back and, of course, win this game, but also play that close, I think would be a big testament to Tennessee, and probably wouldn't drop them off much in net rankings and all that different stuff either. Obviously, kind of looking deeper to the offense for Kentucky, Oscar Tshiebwe is the number one offensive threat thanks to his rebounding ability and his second chance opportunities. He leads the team in scoring, leads the team in rebounding. He's averaging easily a double-double. I think 16 and 15, I want to say, is what he's averaging. 16 points, 15 boards. He's putting up some crazy numbers this season, and he's doing basically the same thing in SEC play. I think it's 16-13 in SEC play. But outside of him and his ability to grab boards and lead to second chance opportunities and just score by himself, you're really going to want to circle Kellen Grady and Davion Mintz. They are sharp shooters, and you need to keep an eye on them from three, and just they're able to get other shots as well. But Grady is making almost 3 3-pointers a game in SEC play and is connecting on 37.1% of those, while Mintz is making a ridiculous 44.1% of his threes in the SEC against league opponents. So those two are just, again, really, really good, competent 3-point shooters, and they both, if I remember correctly, both went off against Tennessee, but who didn't go off against Tennessee when these two teams played each other last time? Also, don't sleep on Sahvir Wheeler. He's not a big offensive weapon, but he's actually pretty efficient when he shoots. He doesn't shoot often, but he's making 38.5% of the 2 threes he attempts per game and 45.3% of his twos. Of course, he's also the guy that helps kind of run the engine, is a big reason why Kentucky has a really good assist to turnover ratio this year, because he is averaging 6.5 assists to just 2.7 turnovers in SEC play. So that's a really, really, really good percentage. That's over 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio on the year, again, in SEC play. So that's really darn good. So that's obviously, without Ty Washington, that's another point guard option for Kentucky, but Wheeler's been really good, the transfer from Georgia, at being a distributor and helping set up guys really well on offense for Kentucky. Defensively, Tshiebwe is actually basically just as good as he is on offense. This season, he's averaging almost 2.5 steals per game as a post, which is really impressive, and 1.5 blocks per game. So he's a guy who's, I can almost say, creating 3 or 4 turnovers per game just based off, in SEC play, just based off those numbers alone. So, he is, again, just as good defensively as he is offensively. And he's going to be a pain for Tennessee to deal with once again. Wheeler also gets about a steal per game in SEC play, and Kentucky as a team is averaging just over 7 steals a game against SEC foes. So they don't create as many turnovers as you would expect, really, but they're pretty decent at poking away the ball and getting some steals as well. Overall this season, Kentucky's had one of the better scoring defenses in the league, as I mentioned earlier, not just scoring offenses, but scoring defenses. SEC teams this year have only managed to eclipse 70 points against Kentucky 6 times. And of course, Tennessee was one of those. But Kentucky's only lost one of those games because of, again, how good their offense is. And that game was against Auburn. So again, the then number 1 team in the country is who they lost to. And as I'm pretty sure they're number 1 when they played them. Regardless, it's Auburn. So, I mean, they're a top 5 team also, along with Kentucky. That's the only game they lost when a team has scored 70 or more against them in SEC play. Otherwise, Kentucky, the few times it's happened, they've still ended up winning because they've scored in the 80s in most of those games as well. In SEC play, Kentucky has the 3rd best three-point defense, allows the 3rd fewest free throw attempts per game, so they don't really foul a whole lot. They allow the 4th fewest rebounds per game as well because they rebound so well as a team. And they have the 4th best scoring defense in league play, as I just mentioned. That, they're darn good on offense and darn good on defense, so that shouldn't surprise anybody. But as I kind of hinted at earlier, surprisingly, they're not great at forcing a bunch of turnovers, only averaging 13.3 forced turnovers a game in SEC play, which is, I think, right around kind of the middle pack of the SEC. But if you remember, when these two teams last played, Kentucky forced Tennessee into 20 turnovers, which is a huge reason why they won that game, along with just they couldn't miss a shot. But they scored 32 points off of turnovers in that game and had 27 fast break points, which are usually because of turnovers. The fast break opportunities are sometimes off rebounds, but usually it's because of a turnover. 32 points off turnovers, 27 fast break points. For comparison, Tennessee had 11 points off turnovers and 1 fast break point. I didn't realize you could have I didn't realize you counted free throws, I guess, made off of a fast break opportunity. But I guess that stat made me realize it because Tennessee had 1 point on a fast break against Kentucky the last time these two teams played. And Tennessee likes to score on the fast break, so that was just kind of shocking to me in that game. And honestly, turnovers and stuff, the assist and turnover numbers, that's kind of the biggest keys for Kentucky when it comes to winning. I mean, that's true for most teams, but it's really huge for Kentucky for winning games. 3 of their 4 losses this year have come when an opponent has had 10 or fewer turnovers. So all but one of their losses have come when an opponent has had 10 or less turnovers in a game against Kentucky. And they've only lost 1 time this season when an opponent had at least 11 turnovers. And that was at least 11 turnovers. That's against LSU. So if a team has 11 turnovers or more against Kentucky, they've won every single time except for 1 time, and that was against LSU. And it's also worth noting that in games where Kentucky doesn't put up a lot of assists either, and doesn't have like a high assist percentage on their field goals, they've also lost quite a bit. They're 1-3 this year when they've had 12 or fewer assists in a game. And all 4 of their losses this year have come when they've had 15 or fewer assists. Kentucky is a perfect 14-0 when they have at least 16 assists in a game. So if they get 16 assists, game over for Tennessee, more than likely, because it also means they've made a lot of shots in the game too. So Tennessee, it's interesting. The defense have done a pretty good job this year at kind of limiting their opponents having assists, and I'll get to that in just a second. Because on the flip side of that, UT, again, unsurprisingly, tends to win a lot more when they have less turnovers in a game. The Vols are 2-2 this year when they have had 17 or more turnovers in a game, and 4 of their 6 losses this year have come when they've had 11 or more turnovers in a game. So 2/3 of their, actually, did I do that math right? Yeah, 2/3 of their losses this year have come when they've had 11 or more turnovers in a game. The Vols are 9-2 when they have 10 or fewer turnovers in a game. So that's a huge difference. 9-2 when they have 10 or fewer turnovers in a game. And again, just like Kentucky, UT loses when they don't get a lot of assists either on their made buckets, as the Vols are a abysmal 1-5 this year when totaling 10 or fewer assists in a game. So Tennessee does not win if they don't get a lot of assists. I mean, 1 win in 6 games when they've had 10 or fewer assists. That's a huge number to keep in mind for Tennessee. Only 1 loss when they've had more than 10 assists at a game. That's also very key to keep in mind for Tennessee. They've done a great job, again, to holding opponents to low assist totals thanks to their defense, and UT is 10-1 when an opponent has 10 or fewer assists. So Kentucky hasn't had many games this year where they've had 10 or fewer assists, but when they have, they've lost. Tennessee's done a really good job of doing that 11 times this year against opponents, which is pretty impressive. Again, I know a lot of those are probably against, when I looked at the stats, they were against, the non-SEC teams, but there was still several high major teams in there that Tennessee had played. They held to 10 assists or fewer in a game. I could do another Josiah Jordan-James segment, but I think you're all probably tired of that. We all know at this point how good Triple J and Zakai Ziegler have been recently, and how hot they've been on offense especially, and defensively too. But could it finally be time for John Fulkerson to be heating up too? Because since the Arizona game, where he had 20 plus points in that game and looked just really good, looked like the Fulkerson of old, Fulker's been struggling because he had COVID right after that. And, kind of has taken a while to get his energy back. And that's understandable, because I think he had long COVID. And, everyone responds to COVID differently. But it seems like, he had taken a while and really kind of struggled with his aggressiveness and his energy. But lately, he's been looking and playing quite a bit better. And his minutes have also been increasing, I think, because of that, but also because Olivier Camois has been out. Since Camois sustained that injury against South Carolina, counting that game, over John Fulkerson's last 3 games, he's averaging almost 24 minutes a game, which is up from like 18 or so of what he was averaging and the stretch there before this happened. After the Arizona game, he's averaging, I think, like 18 or so minutes. I'll get to that in a second. But averaging almost 24 minutes a game and has made 58.8% of his shot attempts. That's outstanding compared to where he was in his previous 9 games. So from Arizona game up until the South Carolina game, in those 9 games, Fulkerson was averaging just 18.7 minutes and making 45.5% of his field goals. So it's a 13% increase in his field goal percentage, and a good 6-minute increase per game in his minutes as well. So I think he's finally getting some of that stamina back. I think he's finally getting the energy back. And of course, this past weekend against Vanderbilt, he had probably his best game since coming back from COVID. Had 12.6 boards. It was the first time dropping double figures and since the Arizona game, since he had 10 points and 7 boards against South Carolina on January 11th. So his first time in I think exactly a month, or almost, basically exactly a month that he had dropped double figures in a game. And his 12 points were also the most he's scored in SEC play this season. Fulkerson, over his last 3 games, those one I mentioned, the South Carolina one, and since then as well, averaging 8 points and 3.7 boards, which doesn't seem like incredible, but that's slowly but surely getting up to what the type of numbers Tennessee really needs from a post player, especially now with Camois. That's very nice contributions off the bench for a post player, and he's been playing like Tennessee's best post player in the last couple games, which is very reassuring if you're Fulkerson and the team and a Vol fan, because Tennessee needs John Fulkerson to be a really, doesn't have to be all SEC player. If he can just get 8, 9, 10 points and 5, 6, 7 boards in a game, perfect. That's exactly what Tennessee needs from him to be effective and get something from Brendan Huntley Hatfield, from Urosh Plaschik, and now from Jonas Adu as well. Tennessee has those young guys that seem like they're finally coming along. Seem like some things are finally starting to click for those guys, which is fantastic and great timing for Tennessee here as we're halfway through the month of February. But that'll be it for this video. Man, I'm excited for this game. I don't know that Tennessee wins, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than it was in Rupp, because Tennessee has been playing really well at home this year. Kentucky's not played great on the road, and I expect that environment to be insane. If you're going to the game, you better show up and be loud. I don't know the age group that people watch this video or whatever. I'm not trying to call any age groups out or anything like that, but I don't care if you're 79 or 19 and you're going to this game. Please be loud, scream, make fun of John Calipari, do what you got to do to make Kentucky not feel welcome. And please don't sell your tickets to Kentucky fans. If you can't go and you're wanting to sell your tickets, to make some money back, please sell it to a Vol fan. Don't sell it to a Kentucky fan. I don't want to see a whole lot of blue in Thompson-Boling. Please make it very, very orange and white, and keep Big Blue out of Knoxville as much as we can, and out of Thompson-Boling especially as much as we can, guys. I know it's weird. I'm talking more like a fan now, I guess. I mean, this it definitely brings the fan out of me for this game. So I am excited for this one. Make sure you get some coffee. Make sure you take a nap or later, I guess, once you get off work and before the game, because it's gonna be a late one. It'll tip off at 9, which means it's, with the way this game usually goes, it'll probably end around like 11:30. So it'll be a late game. Maybe stay up till midnight for some of you, especially if you're a media member covering the game. You'll be up, I don't know how late, but thank you all so much again. Leave your comments down below, please. I would love to hear your thoughts on this game and interact with you guys, and leave comments back with you about score predictions, about anything I've said in this video, about your thoughts on what the keys are. But love to hear you guys. and kind of interact with you guys there as well. You can also tweet at us. We're at Vol Hoops Fever on Twitter, or Vol Basketball Fever on Facebook if you want to comment on anything there as well. And again, please like this video and subscribe to the channel while you're here. We would appreciate that very, very much. I'm Nathaniel Rutherford for Vol Basketball Fever, and this has been another Vol matchup breakdown video.